Hello, today I'll be looking at what's in this exciting little bag from RushFPV. But just before we get into that, a quick reminder to please like or dislike this video if you didn't like it. Comment down below, don't forget to subscribe, and if you can find it, click on that little bell icon, it'll tell you when I'm uploading stuff. So, RushFPV recently reviewed their tank VTXs. Well, only one, I've still got to put one on the quad. Really nice, I put it in the Nazgul 5 to replace the existing VTX there. Very clean, very good VTX, really liked it. So what we've got here today is the Rush Mini stack. It has an F7 FC, a 30 amp 4-in-1 ESC board, and the Rush Tank Mini. So yes, it's designed around the 20mm stack, the mini stack, typically used in your 3-inch quads. So basically we have to do some building in other words. Which I'm pretty lazy at putting stuff together, but I'll give it my best shot because I had really positive experience with the Rush brand, so I'm looking forward to see what's here. So let's open it up and we'll see what's inside. Now I half expected sort of a little stack all pre-made, but what we've got is a bunch of bags with the individual components in. This looks like the accessories bag. We've got a capacitor to presumably get a nicer, more balanced power input. We've got an XT30 which is going to go onto the ESC board some way, and we've got some little connectors presumably for plugging between the ESC board and the flight controller, and perhaps the flight controller to the VTX, that sort of thing. So let's have a look what's in these, nicely protected from electrostatic. Well, in bag number one we've got the 30 amp matrix ESC board, really nice looking layout actually on the board. We've got the input for the power here, we've got the ESC connections running along the side there, and it looks like we've got this little plug and play connector here that's going to go presumably through to the flight controller, so we don't have to have a cable going out. I will show you these in close-up in a second, just so you can actually see what they look like. Bag number two, we got the Rush Tank Mini. Interesting as well, it looks like they've sort of pre-soldered a few bits for it to fit together. We've got these little pins down from the ground, DC and smart audio and video. Presumably again that's going to lock straight down with the flight controller, which means that this must be the flight controller itself, which seems to have this little thing to keep the IMU steady in the centre. I can tell that because it says IMU steady. We've got the little pins that are going to go to the ESC, and up the top here we've got some little sockets that are going to go to the VTX. So the actual thing is going to go together very easily. It's just a case for me about pretty much connecting the camera and the receiver, isn't it, if thinking about it, because there's not much else to do. And it looks like we've got some of these pre-done connectors. So this looks pretty easy to do all in all. Shouldn't be too much build time, which is music to my ears, because for some reason I don't really enjoy the whole building process. I get sort of very distracted with it and don't like doing it. But in terms of what to put this in, because most of the stuff I get, I fly a lot of ready to flies. I don't build much stuff up myself. So the last thing I built, which was a 3-inch quad, was this guy, the Tyro 79, which I thought was pretty good. This has got a little 20mm stack there, and I thought, are we just going to be able to replace this straight out? Because if we could, that would be quite good. And I think the stuff we've got here from Rush is really going to improve the performance here, certainly of the VTX. And I would certainly hope that F7 core is going to be a lot better than this original F4 flight controller we got. So this is my target, but I'll show you these things in a little more detail. Look how they fit together sort of on a dry stack, and then I'll get it installed and we'll go from there. Okay, so let's have a bit of a closer look at those bits and pieces I just showed you. So we got the bag of accessories first off, and as mentioned, the capacitor, the XT30 cable, various little bits of cable and connectors, and the risers and screws. You'll notice that there's long screws with the sort of risers without a screw thread in it. This seems to be the thing at the moment, rather than risers which screw into each other, long screws that sort of pass through and just separate the boards out. And this fits in quite well with how the boards actually do to go together. If we take things out, so going from the bottom, here's the matrix 30 amp board running BL Heli 32, and it's designed to go up this way with the motor layout being as so. Obviously the XT30 cable going on here and the plug and play to the flight controller there. There's not much going on underneath, just the FETs and stuff. this is really where it gets interesting, this F7 board. I looked up and there's literally a little suspended MCU 6000 gyro, I think, in there, sort of floating on a piece of foam, nicely isolated. And under this, as we described previously, there's the connector for going onto the ESC board. There's also a couple of things that we can sort of change, but they've already been set up. You've got the voltage for the receiver here set to 3.3 or 5 volts. That's set to 5. It's just a little jumper to solder. You've got the UART2, which is set to receiver, and up here we've got the camera. It's set to 5 volt instead of battery, and that's basically how it goes. So the connectors here, this is for the LED board, if there is one. This is for your receiver. This is for your camera, and obviously your VTX is going to go on there. Again, it's supposed to go this way up, so presumably its orientation is this way. So let's just connect it into, just do this temporarily to show how it goes. And obviously we'd have little risers just here on the sides, but at that point this then all connects onto this bit of the mini tank like that. It's already got its risers in there, so the whole thing should go up that way like that. So motors 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got the XE30 coming out the side and the USB still accessible with the boot buttons, the buttons for the VTX there, and we've got the MMCX to put a antenna onto. Don't actually get an MCCX in it, but hopefully you've got one. So I checked this size because it seems pretty nice and compact against the size already in this quad, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's going to fit. My only worry was on the existing ESC board, you can see that we go in and all the connections are at the side there. If I tried to do that, and basically the XT30 is at the back there, we'd end up with the USB connector at the front and the whole board around the wrong way and the motors in the wrong order. So I'm going to have a go to see if it will go this way around. Hope so, because it'll make life a lot easier, but I just don't know how flexible this space is in there. But you know, we'll see what happens, see if it'll fit in there or not. But yeah, I'm going to now give that a go, get it into place, and see what happens. Join me after this magical solder interlude. Well, the stack fitted in nicely, really easy to put together. We just had to solder in these horrible stiff wires into the right spots, and we got it around the right way. So we got the USB there and the XT30 coming out here, plenty of room on that. Could have cut that down a bit, but it's okay. And I could have done something like, hey, if I'd have put that on that side and the XT30 on the other side, it would make a bit more sense, but it still fits. Yeah, so this was super easy to put together. It was as soon as we had the initial solder connections, everything else just plonked on, and that single screw going up was really easy. So yeah, that fits in nicely. So all we need to do now is pop it up on Betaflight and get this thing configured, and we can fly it. Okay, so as far as Betaflight setup goes, and I won't go through the whole thing, I just wanted to show a couple of little bits. First off, it wasn't particularly obvious where Smart Audio was because it wasn't set up. I went through the UARTs and finally found it on UART 5, so it's just a question of a bit of trial and error there to get it going. It's running Betaflight 4.1, and at Betaflight 4.1, although we're running BeoHeli 32, we don't get the option of D-Shot 1200 anymore. I don't know what ProShot is. Look at me researching. So I'm just running D-Shot 600. It's all quite regular stuff as I would do it on any of my quads. I've kept pitch tuning absolutely bog standard. The only thing I've done is zap up the rate profiles a little bit for quicker flips, rolls and that sort of thing. And the only weirdness I had here was because this was Betaflight 4.1, which I've not used before, there is the video transmitter thing to set up. Again, this was a complete mystery to me, and I kind of did it wrong first. I thought when you do factory, it knows what's happening. So what I did is I went to the Betaflight site and I went to the smart audio download. I just downloaded that file, and then you can click on this bit here that says load from file, and this basically stuck in all the bits here. I had to add in 800. That wasn't there for some reason, and a couple of these were blank. Depending on where you are, some of these aren't legal, some of these are legal, but you know, I just filled it in. Anyway, that seems to work absolutely fine. Of course, when you hook motors up to ESCs, they never work the first time, and of course this is BL Heli 32, so you need to use BL Heli Suite. Fortunately, I thought I was going to have to use a Windows box for this. BL Heli 32, there is a beta version for a Mac now, which I'm extremely glad to find out. And so I have to say it's not as nice as the regular BL Heli stuff. But yeah, what I had to do is go in and reverse. Oh, only reverse one of them, so not too bad. So with all that done, I think it's time to fly this thing, see how it does. Good news, we've been allocated 40 minutes during this week where it's not going to rain for a change. Actually come out quite nice, but the ground is so wet still, and tomorrow and the next load of days horrible and still cold. Anyway, enough weather report. We've got the RushFPV stack all ready to fly here. I haven't done anything with it. I've obviously set up the VTX channels and I upped my rates, but as far as the tuning goes, that's default, so we have to see how that is. And I'm going to try a couple of power levels out on the little Rush Mini tank there. Start with 25 and see how we go. I only got a little linear on this one, so I'd be interested to see how well it does. Let's try it. So off I went, and then I realised I'd forgotten something, and that was that when I initially tried out the Tyro 79, it seemed to have some weird shearing on the camera, which was really off-putting. I thought at the time it might be down to using the rapid fire module, and then somebody else in the comments actually said it happened to him as well, although there were plenty of people that didn't get the problem, so perhaps a batch of dodgy cameras. Anyway, it kind of ruined this test, because I can't tell if, you know, we've got some bobbling about. Is this because of the camera or something else? And then, oh my god, the way this goes into the sun is just awful. I mean, we got to about 550 meters, which is right at the edge of the field on 25 milliwatts, but it wasn't good enough, so I decided, you know, this is no good. I'm just going to have to go home, change the camera, and wait for another day. Well, I had to wait almost a week for another weather window, but I went out there, and this is the Foxeer Micro Arrow, I think it's called. I did a little bit of tune on the PIDs just to bring the P and the D down a little bit, and it's looking pretty good. The camera's obviously a lot better because it doesn't shear half the text off. It is a very difficult lighting conditions, I've got to say. Even for this, I think this is a micro C/D camera, and it's still struggling going into the sun because the sun is just so low. Anyway, we're going out here. Once again, we're on 25 milliwatts. We're going out right to the corner of the field, which is as far as I can go without going over someone's house, which I don't really want to do. And yeah, footage looks very good. Only the hint of static as we turn around there. Very solid. Quad's feeling really nice to fly, and the VTX is holding up very well, and it managed to survive me flying into that bush I couldn't see because the sun is so low. Honestly, it's just some of the worst conditions ever for cameras England in the winter, because this is about 11 o'clock in the morning, so the sun's coming up to where the highest point is, and it's really nasty because the sun is just so low, it's always in the camera's face there, so you really got to pick the direction you go and stuff. Anyway, that was good. I thought, I mean, it's obviously fine in terms of what it can do in distance, but I thought I'd whack the power up just to see if we get any interference or anything, see if it's still clean. So here we go for another battery, and I should explain, on the day I did this it was so cold. I actually brought 4 batteries with me, but I only used 3 because my fingers were just suffering so much in the weather. I could hardly feel what I was doing on the sticks. Anyway, at 200 milliwatts of power, and all seems to be fine. We're getting, there's a little bit of noise on the screen, but it's nothing too bad. I don't think it's caused by any power increase. And once again, going up to the end of the field here at about 550 meters, obviously nothing bad's going to happen at the higher power. It's absolutely fine and dandy. Quad's flying nicely. all good. So I came on back and I decided to whack the power right the way up to 800 milliwatts because I couldn't be doing with my fingers freezing while I flew it at 500 milliwatts as well. This is a power I'd never really need to go to, and certainly I'd outfly the 2.4 receiver before anything even dodgy happened on the VTX. But if you're going longer distances and you've got a better controlling, then this might be for you. For me, 25 milliwatts is just absolutely fine on this thing. But pleased to see there's no issues with power spikes or anything acting funny. And as I said, quad is flying really nicely. The battery is suffering like no one's business though in this cold weather. It's draining really quickly. I'm just having a quick peek over here in my X field where you can see they're starting to build an actual road there now. But yeah, a good test. Quad held up really well. The only thing I'd want to do is really, because now the Tyro only now consists of the frame and the motors, I'd really prefer a better frame and motors for something as nice as the stack and the camera we've got on this. Well, that worked pretty well, didn't it? It's sat in there, it just dropped in as a replacement. Even these awful motor wires and stuff would go into it and solder in nicely. Now this has basically what's called a pin stack, which means it all just interconnects using its own pins. Some people like those, some people don't like those. Some of the problems people had with them is they thought by being connected all the way along, then you'd possibly get vibrations from one of the sides of the stack going up into the flight controller. Obviously, because that flight controller's got that little floating piece of foam all enclosed where the gyro sits, that actually sort of gets rid of that problem. The other problem people were having about it was they thought if you've got something where you've got risers, connection risers, that could potentially break off and you'd snap the pins away. Not that I've ever had something where one of the parts of the stack snapped off. That was some hell of a crash. But in this situation, that's where the single large screw going up all the way solves that problem, because you're not going to get it where they're all going to break away because you've got those large screws. But that said, it's down to personal preference. A lot of people much prefer sort of cable hookups going between the boards than pins. For me, I really like this. This just all slotted together so easily, I didn't have to think about it. What I liked as well is when I put it together, obviously I had to solder in the XT30 and the little motor wires. At that point I could drop the stack on, as I just mentioned, and then I could use those pre-made cables to hook up to the camera. There's tending to be a little bit of standardisation on the camera pins now, which is nice, although sometimes they're different sizes. And the receiver, obviously I had to solder on one end of it, but the end that went to the board was absolutely fine. And I didn't have an LED board, else I could have put that in as well. But that's a nice little touch, I think, including those sort of things. So you have to do as little work as possible, because I'm all for being as lazy as I can be. I would have liked the kit to include some sort of FPV antenna, even if it's just some little MMCX Omni, just so you can get yourself going, because it can be a bit of a pain. You've like ordered this great kit, you want to get it on your quad and fly it, and then like, oh, I haven't got a FPV antenna which has got an MMCX connection. I would have also liked a little bit more in the way of instruction. It was just a case of here's some stuff in the bag. At the moment, the RushFPV site is under construction, so most of the instructions I found was on the Banggood website, where it obviously comes from RushFPV, and it's got all their schematics and stuff. If I'd have paid slightly more attention to it, I would have found that it actually does mention that TX5 should be used for smart audio connection. I didn't see it the first time I saw it, so hence I just went through the various UARTs until I found it. But very useful for knowing what connects to what in terms of the little sockets you already had. Hopefully in the next few weeks and months, RushFPV will have their website finished off and will have a repository of their instructions for all their gear, so you know exactly how to hook stuff up. After that first flight of the field where I had the wonky camera, I did go back and look at the ProShot stuff, and I couldn't find it gave any more advantage over D-Shot 600, so I didn't do it. That said, it seemed to fly very smoothly. I did a couple of little bits of tuning. I think there's a bit more tuning to do if you want to get that absolutely fine, but it was flying pretty damn smoothly as it was. I just twiddled with a few pids just to bring the D and the P down. For these smaller 3 inches, they're often a little bit more fidgety, but yeah, it was looking good, and the flight controller certainly reacted very nicely. I do find these tanks amazing little VTXs. Again, I couldn't make this do anything bad on 25 milliwatts. I ran out of space to fly, and it was still looking really, really clear, even on this little piddly linear antenna. I mean, yeah, I had rapid fire on my Fat Sharks, but still, very good. I really do love their VTXs. On the subject of VTXs, I found out they're going to do a really micro one, which is going to be called the Tiny Tank, and I saw the dimensions for it, and it's 10 by 12 mil, which is just absolutely stunningly tiny. So I look forward to seeing how that comes out. Now, one thing people might be concerned about, these guys that are all on 6S, is this is a 2 to 5S board right now. It strikes me that that's not too bad on your 3-inch quads, because mostly you fly 4S, but I know there's a whole bunch of people that have taken to put in the 20 mil stack on 5-inch quads now that might want to do 6S. This won't do it safely, so that they limited it at 5S, but they are bringing out a traditional 30mm by 30mm 6S stack that will fit on a 5-inch quad. So yeah, I really liked it. I'm liking the RushFPV stuff a lot. I'm liking the stack a lot. Obviously, it's not a particularly cheap solution, but if you want something really nice when you're building up a quad, probably not the Tyro 79. It's a bit cheap and nasty, and I think I'd like a better home for the RushFPV stack than this one. But if you're building from scratch, if you've got a nice 3-inch frame, you want to drop something in that's nice and easy to put in and is going to fly decently, take a look. So this has been the RushFPV Mini stack, and it was kindly supplied for review by RushFPV, so thanks very much to them. Of course, you can find links down below for where you can check this out in more detail. And I hope that review's been helpful. I will catch you in the next video, and bye for now. Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.